Hey, happy Saturday, everybody. My name is Robert Johnson, and I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk to you today about authentic leadership, and what even does it mean to be authentic first. I think we have to start there. According to John Dugan's book, Leadership Theory, the idea of being authentic is really broken down into four main categories. One would be awareness, or your knowledge and trust on your own thoughts and feelings, motives, values. Number two is an unbiased ability to process. So you objectively think about, you accept your own positive and negative attributes. Third would be your behavior. That's pretty self-explanatory, that you're acting on things that you truly believe. And then the last one would be relational orientation. And that says the achieving and valuing truthfulness and openness in one's closest relationships. Another definition I've heard for authentic is from somebody that you guys probably all know, Craig Rochelle, but I love what he says about it. He just says, your reputation is what others think of you, and your character is actually who you are. It's a great way to look at what it means to be authentic, right? Because there can be a public perception of us, but how many of us know we can be a little fake sometimes because we want people to see the best parts of us? And I think it's great to think about it in terms of character, because that actually is what God looks at. It's our heart, who we are. What is authentic leadership? According to John Dugan, a good definition would be a pattern of leader behavior that draws upon and promotes both positive psychological capacities and a positive ethical climate to foster greater self-awareness and an internalized moral perspective, balanced processing of information, and relational transparency on the part of leaders working with followers, fostering positive self-development. This core competency that I'm going to focus on specifically is going to be self-awareness. It's one that I really appreciate, because I try and be somebody that's very objective and open-minded about all types of different perspectives. Self-awareness says that understands one's own process of deriving and making meaning of the world, as well as how this influences the perspective of self over time, demonstrates understanding of personal strengths and weaknesses, recognizes the multifaceted nature of self, gains self-perspective through social interactions, exhibits mindfulness of one's impact on others. I love that last part. An example of how this might be used, when I was a youth pastor, I wanted the team that was under me to think about success and what it means for our youth ministry to be successful in terms of three things. Number one, I wanted us to always foster environments where students could build healthy relationships. Number two, I wanted to foster environments where students could make memories. And then the last thing was I wanted us to foster an environment where students could stay close to Jesus. These filters caused us to kind of take a step back and become self-aware in our own actions, so that we would better be able to foster and facilitate these environments through the way we behave, by acting on the things that we believed were true and good, right? A practical tip for how I would have our team really flesh this out and take ownership of it, make it personal, would be an exercise where I would ask them, how many of you have had a negative church experience? And everybody would have a hand that went up. We would talk about why or what that experience was, and then we would boil it down to the negative feeling that they had when they were a student. And then I would try and flip that on its head and say, okay, let's all write down a list of the top 3 or the top 5 things the feelings we want to create in the students that step through the doors of this church. And the goal there was for them to, 1, personalize it, and then 2, also use that as kind of a framework where we could create new creative ideas for the ministry, ways to interact with students, ideas for events or games we might want to do, whatever it might be. But anything that accomplished creating those positive feelings, helping students to create positive memories in the youth ministry was the goal, right? And I think you can apply that to any part of your life, your leadership. We all have a personal culture. That's why sometimes when you call, somebody picks up the phone, and sometimes they don't. Nobody stops and thinks about all of the top 10 favorite things about you when the phone is ringing. Nobody stops and thinks about the top 10 least favorite things about you. They just have a feeling, and based off that feeling or the culture, the feelings we've created in them, they know whether or not they want to talk to you. So we just need to be more self-aware and mindful of that, and maybe take it a step further and be intentional by creating that list. I'll close with this. Maya Angelou, who was a poet, said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Thank you.